My ex tried to take our children, then demanded I repay $12,000. I offered him a choice. He laughed, "You'll never touch my retirement." For years later, I received 4 times more. The first time I understood how far Derek would go to control me, I was standing at a grocery checkout with our 2 children beside me. The cashier ran my card. Then she ran it again. Her expression changed. "I'm sorry. It's being declined." I stared at the card in her hand. That can't be right. I had checked the balance the night before. There wasn't much left, but there should have been enough for groceries. Owen stood beside the cart, holding a box of cereal against his chest. Hazel was restless in the child's seat, rubbing her eyes because she was tired. The cashier tried once more. Declined. People waited behind us while I stepped aside and called the bank. After several security questions and a long hold, the woman on the phone told me the joint account had been temporarily restricted because of a dispute. I already knew who had caused it. Derek had left the house less than 2 weeks earlier. Before walking out, he had promised I would regret making him leave. I called him from the store. He answered on the 4th ring. "What did you do to the account?" He didn't ask what I meant. "I protected my money. It's a joint account. It's my paycheck. The children need food. Then get a job." He knew exactly why I wasn't working. When Owen was born, Derek pressured me to quit. At first, he made it sound practical. Daycare would take most of my income. The hours would be difficult. We would barely come out ahead. He promised I could return to work once Owen started school. Then Hazel was born and the promise changed. 2 children in daycare would cost even more. The house would fall behind. His schedule was too unpredictable. Every time I brought up working again, he found a new reason it wouldn't make sense. Now he was using the dependence he had encouraged against me. "They're your children too," I said. His response came without hesitation. "The courts haven't ordered me to give you a dime." Then he hung up. I looked at the cart. Milk, bread, fruit, diapers. The cheapest meat I could find. None of it was for me. A woman from the next checkout line walked over and handed me $40. I tried to refuse it. She closed my fingers around the bills. "Buy what your babies need." I thanked her without looking directly at her because I knew I would cry. I returned half the groceries and paid for the rest with a stranger's money. Until that moment, part of me had believed Derek would calm down once he accepted that our marriage was over. But he wasn't reacting out of heartbreak. He was creating pressure. He wanted me frightened, broke, and desperate enough to let him come home. The control had started years earlier in ways that were easy to dismiss. He questioned grocery receipts. He noticed every small purchase I made. If I bought shampoo, he asked why I hadn't chosen a cheaper brand. If Owen needed shoes, Derek complained that children outgrew things too quickly. If the electric bill increased, he acted as though I had personally wasted the money. His own spending never required an explanation. Restaurant charges were supposedly related to work. Cash withdrawals were none of my business. Weekend trips appeared with almost no warning. When I questioned him, he accused me of being controlling. By the time Hazel was 2, Derek was spending more nights away from home. He blamed work, then traffic, then exhaustion. He carried his phone from room to room and kept it face down whenever I was nearby. One evening, he left it on the kitchen counter while he showered. The screen lit up. "I miss waking up next to you." For several seconds, I only stared at the message. My first feeling wasn't anger. It was relief. For months, Derek had told me I was imagining the distance between us. He called me insecure, suspicious, and unstable. That message proved I wasn't imagining anything. When he came downstairs, I was sitting at the table with his phone in front of me. He stopped when he saw my face. "Who is she?" His eyes moved to the screen. "You went through my phone?" The message appeared. "So now you're spying on me? Did you sleep with her?" His expression hardened. "You have no idea what it's like coming home to this every day." To what? The questions. The crying. The constant problems. I couldn't understand how his affair had become evidence against me. Over the next few days, he admitted only what he thought he had to. First, he said it had happened once. Then he said it was mostly emotional. Then he claimed our marriage had already been failing. His version changed depending on what he needed me to believe. I stayed longer than I should have. I had no independent income, no savings he couldn't reach, and no relatives nearby who could take us in. Derek knew that. Once he realized I couldn't leave easily, his behavior became worse. He shouted more. He slammed doors. He threw things near me, then insisted he had never aimed at me. Sometimes he grabbed my arms during arguments and later claimed I bruised too easily. He always had an explanation. The final incident happened at dinner. Owen knocked over a glass. It struck the floor and shattered. Derek jumped up so quickly that his chair scraped backward. "What is wrong with you?" Owen froze. "It was an accident," I said. Derek grabbed his arm and pulled him away from the broken glass. Owen cried out, more from fear than pain. Derek leaned down toward him. "You're going to learn to stop acting like a baby." Something inside me went completely still. I stepped between them. "Let him go." Derek turned toward me. "What did you say?" I said let him go. He released Owen. For 1 second, I thought he might grab me too. Instead, he pointed toward the hallway. "Move." "No. You're leaving." He laughed. "This is my house. Then I'll call the police and let them decide who leaves." His expression changed. Derek had always depended on my fear. The moment he realized I was willing to make the situation public, he became cautious. He packed a bag while insulting me. He called me unstable. He said I was destroying the family. He promised the children would hate me when they were older. Before leaving, he stood in the doorway. "You'll beg me to come back." I didn't. But there were days when he made survival so difficult that I understood exactly what he was trying to accomplish. After the joint account was restricted, I borrowed money and opened an account at another bank. I sold jewelry and anything else we didn't need. I canceled every expense that wasn't essential. I learned how long a tank of gas could last if I only drove to school, the grocery store, and the courthouse. Derek refused to contribute voluntarily. Every conversation ended with the same sentence. "The courts haven't ordered me to pay." When I filed for temporary support, he delayed everything he could. He claimed documents had not reached him. He requested extensions. He submitted incomplete financial information. He made his income look smaller than it was. When I filed for a default after he failed to respond properly, he confronted me outside the courthouse. He stood between me and my car door. "You're trying to ruin me." "I'm trying to feed your children." "You think a judge is going to believe everything you say?" "I have records." When I tried to step past him, he grabbed my wrist. I told him to let go. A man walking toward the courthouse stopped and looked at us. Derek released me immediately. Then he smiled as though we had been having an ordinary conversation. That night, I wrote down the date, time, location, and every word I could remember. From then on, I documented everything. Every refusal to help. Every missed visit. Every threatening message. Every time he told me I would receive nothing. It took 6 months before we finally stood in front of a judge. By then, I was behind on bills and surviving on borrowed money. Derek arrived in a suit, carrying a folder as though he were the responsible parent. His attorney argued that the amount I requested was excessive. My attorney, Caroline, explained Derek's income, the children's expenses, and the fact that I had left the workforce after he pressured me to stay home. The judge ordered Derek to pay a combined total of $2,562 each month in child and spousal support. I remember the exact number because, after months of having almost nothing, it sounded enormous. Outside the courtroom, Derek leaned toward me. "You think you won?" "I think the children can eat. You won't see that money." For a while, he was right. He ignored the order until wage garnishment began. By then, he was about $6,000 behind. Once support enforcement consequences escalated, he suddenly found a way to pay. The arrears later helped me obtain permission to relocate with the children. I wanted to move somewhere more affordable, where I had support and a realistic chance of rebuilding. Derek objected. He claimed I was trying to keep the children away from him. Caroline presented his payment history, missed visits, and repeated refusal to cooperate. The judge approved the move. The divorce was finalized, and the children and I started over in a small rental. The kitchen table doubled as my desk. The children shared a room. I still had to count every dollar. But the house was peaceful. There were no slammed doors. No one inspected grocery receipts. No one made Owen flinch when he spilled something. I slowly returned to work and began rebuilding my independence. About a year after the divorce, I remarried. His name was Luke. He didn't enter my life as a rescuer. By then, I already understood how dangerous it was to depend entirely on another person. What Luke gave us was steadiness. He never treated the children like an inconvenience. He never demanded an explanation for every dollar I spent. The first time Owen dropped a plate in Luke's kitchen, he froze. His shoulders tightened as he waited for anger. Luke looked at the broken pieces. Nobody move. There might be sharp edges. He cleaned them up, handed Owen another plate, and continued the conversation. Later, Owen asked me quietly, "He's not mad." "No, but I broke it. It was an accident." Owen nodded as though he were learning a new rule about the world. Before Luke and I married, I reviewed my divorce paperwork. Spousal support had been ordered for 2 years. There was a section indicating whether it would automatically stop upon remarriage. The relevant box had not been checked. I read the order several times and believed the payments would continue for the remaining period. Derek paid the spousal portion for approximately 1 year after I remarried. That amount totaled about $12,000. I also knew the marital portion of his retirement account had never been formally divided. I had not waived my right to pursue it, but doing so would require more paperwork, legal fees, and cooperation from someone who fought every request. I was exhausted. I accepted the support paid under the existing order and chose not to pursue the retirement account. I believed the amounts were probably similar, and I wanted the financial conflict to end. For several years, life settled into an uneasy routine. Derek still complained about expenses and argued over schedules, but the major court battles stopped. Then, in 2017, I received a thick envelope. Derek had filed for sole custody. I read the first page 3 times. He claimed the children would be better off living with him. He accused me of interfering with his relationship with them. He questioned the stability of my home. There had been no emergency, no school concern, no medical issue, no sudden change involving the children. I called Caroline. Why would he do this now? Custody cases are sometimes about custody, she said. Sometimes they're about control. We need to find out which one this is. During the case, Derek learned that I had remarried years earlier. He then realized spousal support had continued for roughly 1 year after my marriage to Luke. He became furious. He accused me of hiding the marriage and taking money I wasn't owed. I hadn't hidden anything. The children had spoken about Luke many times. He was listed on school and emergency records. Derek had simply never paid enough attention to connect the information. At a meeting before the hearing, Derek stared across the table at me. "You owe me $12,000. The order didn't clearly say the payment stopped. Everyone knows support ends when you remarry. Then the order should have reflected that. You knew exactly what you were doing." I read the document. "You stole from me." That was when I explained the decision I had made. "The marital portion of your retirement was never divided," I said. "I chose not to pursue it because I accepted the support instead." His expression changed. "If you let the $12,000 remain settled, I'll continue leaving the retirement account alone." Derek leaned back in his chair. "You'll never touch my retirement." "Then let the support issue go." "No. You're paying back every cent. You should discuss that choice with your attorney." "I don't need permission to take back my own money." I looked at Caroline. She gave me a small nod, telling me not to argue further. Derek had been offered a clear choice. Let the support issue remain closed, and I would not pursue the unresolved retirement division. Or demand repayment, and I would move forward with claiming my marital share. He wanted the money back and believed he could prevent me from receiving anything else. The judge later ruled that I had to repay the support received after my remarriage. I accepted the decision. During the same proceedings, however, the court reviewed our updated financial information. Derek's income had increased significantly since the divorce, so his child support obligation was recalculated. The court structured the repayment as an offset against the newly increased amount. After both adjustments were applied, I still received approximately $20 more each month than before. Derek was technically recovering the overpayment, but the updated support calculation canceled out nearly all of the difference. Outside the courtroom, he looked furious. "You got rewarded for lying. I followed the written order, and now I'm following the judge's ruling. You're not getting 1 cent of my retirement. That isn't your decision anymore." His custody case also began falling apart. The children were stable. Their school records were good. There were no concerns about our home. Derek could not show that uprooting them would improve their lives. Eventually, he dropped his request for sole custody in exchange for 2 additional weeks during the summer. I agreed because the children wanted the case to end. But I did not forget that Derek had pulled them into another court battle and then turned that battle into a fight over money. I instructed Caroline to begin the retirement division. I thought it would be straightforward. It wasn't. Derek refused to provide complete statements. Then he claimed he didn't have them. When records were requested directly, he objected. When documents required his signature, he ignored them. When deadlines were set, he missed them. Each delay created more legal fees. At one point, he claimed the account had changed providers and could no longer be located. Caroline found it. Then he argued that the entire account belonged to him because it was held in his name. The court disagreed. I was not claiming contributions made before our marriage or after the divorce. I was pursuing only the portion earned during the marriage. Derek still described every dollar I might receive as something being stolen from him. The process continued for years. Owen became quiet whenever his father mentioned court. Hazel once asked me whether she was the reason we kept seeing lawyers. I sat beside her on the couch. None of this is because of you. Dad says you keep taking his money. The court is dividing something that was built while we were married. Are you going to keep fighting forever? I hope not. That was the truth. I didn't want another long fight. But I had learned that surrendering something just to create peace never produced peace with Derek. It only taught him to demand more. His refusal to cooperate eventually became so serious that the court sanctioned him. He was ordered to pay an additional $600 a month for 1 year because of his delays and non-compliance. That payment was separate from child support. The court also found him in contempt for repeatedly ignoring orders. Outside the courtroom, Derek turned on me. You planned all of this. No. I offered to leave the retirement alone. You knew it was worth more. I didn't. That was true. I had assumed my share would be close to $12,000. That was why I believed accepting the remaining support had been a fair alternative. During our marriage, Derek controlled the finances. I had never seen complete retirement statements or known how much had accumulated. The longer he delayed, the more determined I became to learn the actual amount. In January 2021, Derek proposed to his girlfriend, Autumn. Hazel showed me a picture from social media. Autumn held out her hand with a ring while Derek smiled beside her. I expected to feel angry. Instead, I felt relieved that the woman standing next to him was no longer me. I hoped he treated her differently. I also wondered how much she knew about the court cases, the unpaid support, and the sanctions. I didn't ask. In May, nearly 4 years after the custody filing, Caroline called me. The transfer has been completed. I was sitting at the kitchen table. How much? She told me. I didn't respond. Megan. I'm here. Did you hear the amount? Yes. It was roughly 4 times the $12,000 Derek had demanded back. I asked Caroline to repeat it. Then I logged into the account and stared at the balance. Luke entered the kitchen and saw my face. What happened? It's finished. The retirement case? I nodded. He looked at the screen and sat beside me. I had expected the moment to feel like victory. Instead, it felt like the end of a storm that had lasted so long I had forgotten what silence sounded like. The money wasn't a fortune, and I didn't treat it like one. I paid the remaining legal expenses. I strengthened the children's education funds. I placed the rest somewhere Derek could never freeze, control, or threaten to take away. I thought the story was over. Then Autumn emailed me. The subject line said, "You need to understand what you've done." Her message was long. She said Derek refused to set a wedding date because he was afraid of losing more money. She accused me of cleaning out his retirement. She said I had stolen years of work from him and damaged their future. I read the message twice. Then I forwarded it to Caroline before replying. I explained that I had originally chosen not to pursue the retirement account. I told Autumn about the option Derek had rejected. He could have allowed the support issue to remain settled, or he could demand repayment and let the unresolved retirement division proceed. He chose repayment. The court determined my share. Autumn replied less than an hour later. You knew you would get more from the retirement account. I answered. No. I believed the amounts would be similar. That was why I offered the agreement. Her next message came immediately. You still took money that wasn't yours. I stared at that sentence. Then I wrote. The The court calculated the marital portion. Derek spent 4 years refusing to cooperate with that process. She responded, because it was his retirement. There was no point continuing. Autumn saw the final transfer. She had not seen the years I stayed home raising Derek's children because he insisted I stop working. She had not stood in the grocery store when the joint account stopped working. She had not watched him ignore support orders or drag out the retirement case until the court sanctioned him. Before ending the conversation, I sent one final response. If Derek wants to marry you but is worried about protecting his assets, the two of you can sign a prenuptial agreement. Autumn replied, I shouldn't have to sign a prenup because you robbed him. I did not answer again. A few weeks later, Derek called me. Why are you discussing our finances with Autumn? She emailed me. You should have ignored her. She accused me of stealing. You're trying to turn her against me. I suggested a prenup. He laughed bitterly. Of course you did. It would protect both of you. You don't care about protecting anyone. There was a time when that accusation would have made me defend myself. Instead, I said, you chose this process. No. You chose to take my retirement. I offered to leave it alone. You took support after you were married. The judge ordered repayment, and it was repaid. You knew I would fight. Yes, I said. That was the one thing I knew for certain. He went quiet. You fought every order because you thought making the process harder would make me give up. This time I didn't. That isn't what happened. It is exactly what happened. He hung up. I never found out whether Derek and Autumn eventually married. The engagement pictures remained online, but the children stopped mentioning wedding plans. I didn't ask. For years, Derek blamed other people for every consequence of his choices. When his wages were garnished, he blamed me for involving the court. When he fell behind, he blamed the amount. When the custody case failed, he blamed the judge. When he was sanctioned, he blamed Caroline. When the retirement account was divided, he said I had robbed him. I no longer needed him to understand why those things happened. The court records were enough. I never asked to become financially dependent on Derek. He pressured me to stop working, controlled the money, and refused to support the children until a judge forced him to. When I offered him the smaller and simpler outcome, he rejected it because letting me keep $12,000 felt like losing. His decision cost him roughly 4 times as much. Some people call that revenge. Maybe part of it was. Once Derek tried to take the children and turned another court case into financial warfare, I stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. I didn't decide the value of the retirement account. I didn't calculate the final division. I simply stopped walking away from something the court determined belonged partly to me. Years after that first grocery store incident, I was shopping with Hazel. She was older and pushing the cart while telling me about school. At the checkout, the card reader took longer than usual. For 1 second, my chest tightened. Then the screen flashed. Approved. Hazel didn't notice. To her, it was an ordinary purchase on an ordinary evening. That was all I had wanted for my children. A home where a broken plate was only a broken plate. A grocery trip was only a grocery trip. And money was not a weapon someone could use to frighten them. I took the receipt and walked outside with my daughter beside me. I didn't feel like I had stolen Derek's retirement. I felt like I had finally reclaimed the security he had once convinced me I could never have without him. But some people still believe I should have left the account alone after the support dispute was resolved. So was I wrong for pursuing my share after Derek rejected my offer, or did he simply choose the most expensive version of his own consequences?